Hello, I'm Brian Wilgas with Full Speed Ahead Tech Department, and I'm going to talk to you a bit about ceramic bottom bracket bearing maintenance. Now, I'm sure you've heard all the benefits of ceramic bearings. They roll smoother, they have less friction, and they're more durable than steel. But dirt and other contaminants will rob you of these performance advantages, so it's important to maintain them. Cleaning and re-greasing your bottom bracket is going to maintain those performance advantages and contribute to a longer wear life. The first thing you're going to want to do is go to the website and download the BB maintenance schedule. It's available in our service and tech section of the website, fullspeedahead.com. Now that I have the ceramic bottom bracket maintenance schedule printed, there are some other things that I'm going to want before I begin. I have my grease syringe, I have my razor blade and scratch awl. Now these are going to be used to remove the bearing covers and bearing seals. And I also have my Mega XO bottom bracket bearing installation and removal tool. You may have also noticed I have extra bearing covers and bearing seals. These can crack or tear when you remove them, so it's especially handy to have extras in case that happens. Also, if you have the older style bottom brackets, they have a top hat style bearing cover. It's virtually impossible to remove these without cracking them. So again, having an extra set on hand is going to make the rebuilding process run more smooth. Your local bike shop can order bearing covers and bearing seals from Full Speed Ahead. Make sure to have the version number handy when ordering to make sure you get the right bearing covers for your bottom bracket. Okay, so now we can get started. First thing I'm going to do is take the bearing covers off. And I'm going to use the razor blade because I find that to be easier. You can use a scratch awl. And it just pops off. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the bearing removal tool. Now you're going to notice that there's two different sides to the base of the bearing tool. One has a smaller ID and the other one has a larger ID. The larger ID is used for removal and the smaller is used for installation. So you got to make sure to put the bottom bracket cup in the right side. To remove the bearing, make sure that the face goes down into the base and then screw the top portion into the cup. Now I'm going to put this in a vise and use a crescent wrench to press the bearing out the rest of the way. Now that I have the bearing out, I can remove the seals. Now these are very delicate and you can damage them quite easily with the razor blade. Now that the seals are off, I can clean the bearing. Now we use a simple green solution that's diluted in water. You don't want to use any solvents and especially not kerosene because that can be very corrosive to the bearing races. Now once it's cleaned, I'm going to let it dry and give it a spin to feel for any grit and roughness. And that's usually a sign it needs to be cleaned again, but if it's really bad, it can be a sign that the bearing races are damaged and the bearing is going to need to be replaced. Now when it comes to grease, we use a high quality silicone-based grease that's lighter weight and offers a little bit less rolling resistance than standard grease. But it's a trade-off. Standard grease is going to give you better resistance to water and other contaminants. Also, the fill rate plays a role in that as well. So if I have a customer who's going to be commuting on the bike or riding it year-round in all conditions, I'll probably use a heavier weight grease that's a little bit more resistant to water and contaminants, and also a little bit higher fill rate to help keep the bearings healthy during that time. Now if it's a customer that solely uses the bike during racing and in ideal conditions, I'll probably use a less amount of grease and a lighter weight grease to keep the bearings rolling smoothly. Now that the bearings are greased up, I'm just going to pop the seals into place. I'm just going to work my way around the circumference of the bearing seal. And then I'm going to give the bearing a quick rotation. If it feels really tight, that may mean that the bearing seal isn't quite snapped into place all the way, or that the seal's damaged and needs to be replaced. This bearing feels really good, so it's ready to be pressed back into the cup. Now, pressing the bearing in is pretty much the same process as pressing it out. Before I do that though, I'm just going to clean the inside of the bearing cup out. Make sure there's no dirt or any other debris that might cause creaking. If you have some acetone, that works really well for this. Anything that gets between the bearing and the cup is going to cause noise, and we're definitely going to want to prevent that. But the next thing to do is to put some retaining compound on the cup. Now you don't want to use too much, because if you use too much it's going to leach into the bearing and cause a lot of problems for your bearing. So just a little bit is okay. And then I'm just going to want to work that around the inside of the cup before pressing it in. Okay, so we're ready to press the bearing back in the cup. Now I'm going to grab my installation tool. Now the cup is going to go into the smaller ID portion of the base, threads down. Now you might have noticed this washer that came with the press. We didn't use it to take the bearing out, but we're definitely going to use it to press the bearing in. What it does is it'll actually put the pressure on the outside race of the bearing instead of the inside race of the bearing. It's a lot more healthy for the bearing that way. The other thing to take note of, there's a little groove on the inside race of your bearing. That's got to face outward because that's what the bearing cover snaps into. Now if you have the old style bottom bracket with the top hat style of bearing cover, you don't have to worry about this step. But if you have the newer version, you definitely want to be aware of that, because if you don't, you could get it wrong and you'll have to press the bearing out and turn it around before you can put the bearing cover on. Okay, just got back from the vise. This bearing cup is ready to go. We just got to put the bearing cover on. And that's pretty easy. All you do is take the bearing cover and snap it into the groove. Give it a quick spin, make sure there's no friction, and that's going to be ready to go. Now, if you have the old style bottom bracket with the top hat style bearing cover, if you try to press the bearing cover into the bearing, you could potentially crack this. So a quick tip is put the bearing cover on the bench. Some of these came with an O-ring. You could put the O-ring on the bearing cover, and then put the bearing over the cover and press it on, and it goes on really quick and easy, and there's less risk of cracking the cover. Thank you for joining me for this tech video. I hope it was informative and helpful. Please keep checking back at fullspeedahead.com for more tech updates and more videos to come.